if you look at your Google Search Console account from today and 5 years ago, and if you could 10 years ago, there's not a single keyword that you can point to where the click-through rate has gone up. They have all gone down, every single one. You are not getting as many clicks per search as you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and that number is not going to turn around.
This is the Inbound Forecast, a podcast series about inbound marketing and organic growth for B2B companies. Here's your host, Gerald Arcus.
A quick note before Rand and I start our conversation. Something went wrong during the recording of this episode. Because of this, I had to do a lot of editing work to improve the sound quality. The first few seconds of this episode are missing, so Rand will start right away. And if you are watching on YouTube, some parts may not have been perfectly synced.
Thanks for having me, Gerald. Good to be here. So let's see. For folks who aren't familiar, I started a company. My first company was Moz, which was in the SEO software space. Ran that company for many years, stepped down as CEO. I left in 2018 and started Sparktoro. Sparktoro makes audience research software, and we're very different from Moz in a lot of ways. We are a much smaller company. So Sparktoro is just 3 people, myself, Casey, and Amanda Natividad, who created the term zero-click content, was the first one to coin that, and which is what we'll discuss today. And the 3 of us have been trying to help folks better understand their audience's behaviors and demographics via the software that Sparktoro provides, and through lots of our content and podcast episodes and webinars and events and all that kind of stuff too.
Sounds good. And so not doing a lot with SEO anymore, right?
Nope, no SEO at all. In fact, Sparktoro gets almost no search traffic except for its own brand name.
Ah, that's interesting. Yeah. Maybe we can start with the definition. So what is zero-click content?
Yeah, so when Amanda phrased it originally, the concept is that many major tech networks, that includes content networks, entertainment networks. So entertainment networks maybe is something like a YouTube or a TikTok. Content networks being places more like maybe perhaps a Reddit or even Quora, and lots of other social media platforms. So Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, all of these places don't want to send traffic out. They want to keep visitors on their sites and platforms and apps. And that makes a lot of sense, right? They make more revenue the longer you stay on them. They make more revenue keeping you on their platform and learning about your activities there rather than sending you out somewhere else. And of course, that behavioral data can be used to target you in the future with advertising or sell that data to advertisers. So there's a lot of economic incentives for all these platforms to not send traffic out. And it's become the trend the last 10 years that very, very seldom do you see these platforms giving any kind of preference to outlinking content. All their algorithms preference content that keeps you on the website. The weird thing now is that there's an exception with Mastodon, which of course is rising in popularity as people leave Elon Musk's Twitter. And Mastodon does not have a preference for zero-click content, but everyone else does.
Yeah, indeed.
And this is also true of Google Search, which over the last 10 years has become a place where historically Google was come to us and then leave. We want to send you to the open web. We want to send you to the rest of the internet. But that has changed dramatically over the last decade. And now Google is keeping more and more of those clicks for themselves. When they do send clicks out, they're often to other Google properties. So the biggest beneficiaries of Google Search are YouTube, Google Maps, Google News is a huge beneficiary, Google Flights, Google Hotels.
Or ads, right?
Google Credit Card. Sorry?
Or ads.
Yeah, and ads, of course. So if you're going to click something in Google, by all means, dear God, don't click an organic result. That would be terrible for Google's bottom line. they've got to keep showing Wall Street growth. And so please click only on the ads. Everything else should remain in Google's ecosystem.
Do you think it's also better for the user? So, of course, advertising is one big reason, but for example, TikTok showed that people like short video answers to specific queries. And for some of these queries, they win from Google. I think they have more market share or better answers. So is ads the only reason, or is it better for us consumers on the platform too?
Yeah, I think short term, you could certainly argue that consumers are, searchers of Google, for example, are happier when they get a consistent UI and UX, right? So if I am used to clicking on Google Maps and getting the maps listing, and I know where to find the phone number, I know where to find the contact info, I know where to find the photos, I know where to find the directions, and it's always the same. I don't have to learn a new website's interface and get their branding and colors and try and figure that out. Google has, in fact, I think all of the web's big tech companies have relied on that, like, hey, familiarity breeds trust, breeds convenience. And so I think there is a short-term benefit to consumers. Long-term, it's terrible, absolutely awful. But consumers are not good about thinking, thinking long-term, right? When I click on Google Maps, I'm like, just get me there fast. I need to go there fast. I don't think about the fact that, gosh, Google's dominant monopoly of both maps and web search really means that long-term, there's going to be less innovation in this space, and there's less opportunity for everyone else. And actually, late-stage capitalism with a few powerful monopolies controlling everything is really terrible for income inequality. That's not what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, get me to the restaurant quickly, Google, because I told Gerald I'd meet him there at 7 p.m.
Indeed. Yeah, so this podcast is about organic growth for B2B companies, and you have an overview on your website. I'm looking at it right now. I think also in the blog from Amanda about the different platforms and zero-click content on these platforms. And for example, when I look at LinkedIn, it says that LinkedIn is prioritizing, the algorithm is prioritizing native content, and that creators benefit from a zero-click approach. So do you think, based on that content creators on LinkedIn, for example, should go all in, or should say, well, at the moment, 90% of all of our posts have a link, we should maybe decrease it to 50% with a link?
Yeah, so for an individual creator or company or social media marketer, I think the choice is yours, but the concept of zero-click content should be sitting in your mind as a part of how you consider your strategy going forward. So if you are crafting hey, how tactically should I get this particular message out about our new product, our new feature, our new launch, a piece of content, a blog post that we wrote, you might consider, hey, if I put a link in my LinkedIn post, it is going to, on average, perform worse than if I filmed a 30-second video about it, put that up, and then maybe a few hours later, I posted a link in the comments that had a link to the website. This is a strategy that many, many people use on LinkedIn. It is quite effective. It's proven that way. LinkedIn doesn't seem to mind comments that include a link. And so lots of folks do that. You could conceivably treat Twitter the same way. You could post that short video, or you could post a thread about it on Twitter and potentially get more reach with your link than if you had just posted the link by itself. And you can do this over and over, right? So these platforms don't limit your posting activity. You're welcome to do that. Facebook's the same way. Reddit content tends to, communities and subreddits tend to frown deeply upon people who promote a link. And so, you just tend to do better with non-linked content across the board. And that would be generally my advice is that you at least experiment with it and consider making it a core part of your strategy for how you distribute content and messaging.
But then, so you can put the link in the comments. I think you can also, for example, with this podcast, I can ask people to search for this podcast in a video, but then ask them to search for it on YouTube or Spotify or whatever.
Yeah.
But then the goal is still to get them to your own platform. Should that be the goal?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. So I think that this is the way I think about it for Sparktoro, for example. The social media platforms, the entertainment content networks, Google in general, all of these places are places to distribute messages, kind of like a billboard or a magazine advertisement in the 20th century, right? My goal is simply make as many people as possible aware of Sparktoro, who it's for, what it does, how it helps them solve their audience research problems, right? And then rely on them when they have the problem that Sparktoro solves, they'll come to us.
Yeah, but then you don't need the direct call to action. You just want people to remember Sparktoro, right?
Exactly. And I believe that you are going to have to get in front of your audience, especially if you're, B2B tech and trying to sort of introduce people to a new concept, which audience research is a relatively new concept for a lot of marketers, unfortunately. And so what you want to do is reinforce that notion over and over again, right? So Gerald, your podcast is one place where I might talk about audience research and, using Sparktoro, but there'll be, 3 or 4 other podcasts maybe that I do this week. And I do a guest post for, an agency's website. And we run a webinar of our own next week, and we post on social about things, and we put up videos and all these different places, very few of them with any attributable direct clicks.
Yeah, so for example, when I saw your Whiteboard Fridays, let's say 8 years ago, I think on social media you had a link to the website, to the Whiteboard Friday, and right now you are posting on LinkedIn and publishing your knowledge there.
Yep. So exactly, there's a very good comparison, right? So yeah, a decade ago when I was at Moz and I would do blog posts and Whiteboard Fridays and all these other kinds of content, those always included a link. The goal was not just to drive people back to the website, but to be able to attribute every click. I wanted to know, hey, LinkedIn drives this much traffic for us. Twitter drives that much traffic for us. Reddit drives this much traffic. Facebook drives this much traffic. Our email list drives that much traffic. All those things, right? And so I very rarely, especially because we were venture backed and we had to kind of, prove our metrics to our team and to leadership, we biased away from things where we could not prove the attribution. And now it's the complete opposite. I think that provable attribution is extraordinarily expensive and very ineffective.
I like your content about that topic as well. To be honest, before I contacted you, I was thinking, should we talk about zero-click content or the measurement part? Because I think it has a lot to do with dark social and things like that, right?
It's really one and the same topic, right? The whole concept of zero-click content is about losing attribution, making it harder to measure, but potentially getting more value, potentially getting even more from your marketing. So the efficacy and effectiveness of the marketing can go up even though you can't measure it. And that is very problematic for a lot of marketers, a lot of CMOs, a lot of agencies. They won't do it. And Gerald, that's why it works so well. It works so well because very few people are willing to invest in hard to measure channels. If everybody put all their eggs into the zero-click content basket, it wouldn't be nearly as effective.
No, because then we have a content overload, right?
Right. Your competitors are not willing to do it because they can't prove it.
Yeah, I hope that stays that way for a very long time. But I'm afraid that we are going to ruin LinkedIn too within a few years.
I mean, LinkedIn, of the networks that I worry about losing, I think it seems like Twitter is teetering on the edge of self-destruction. LinkedIn seems pretty solid and safe to me.
I'm not on Twitter, so
Yeah. Well, you're not missing much right now.
yeah. So I'm looking at Mastodon right now. Now I have. It's a good moment to jump in and be one of the first.
Yes, absolutely.
So, what do you think when we look at the SEO part of this? Um, um, so, I think if I had asked you the question, should all companies do something with SEO 8 years ago? I think your answer was yes in almost all cases, right?
I think that's right. Yes.
Is that still the case?
No, I mean, look at us at Sparktoro. We do virtually no SEO at all. I can't think of a term. I don't think we have a keyword that sends us more than 20 visits a month. Not one, other than Sparktoro, right? And other variations on our brand name. And the business is doing very well, right? 1,500 plus paying subscribers and, a little over 1.5 million ARR. Like it's growing nicely.
And I think there are a lot of B2B companies like you, right?
Yeah.
I think they have a better return on investment with other channels. Because
I agree. I think, and this is for 3 reasons, right? One is SEO has gotten ludicrously competitive.
Yeah.
So 15 years ago, virtually no one was doing SEO professionally. Very few people were doing it well. 10 years ago, a good bit more. 5 years ago, a lot of people. Today, everybody's doing a lot of SEO and they're doing it very well. And every change, there's just tons of people paying attention. So that market is robust, it's aggressive, it's competitive. Second, as Will Reynolds put it on our webinar last week, if you look at your Google Search Console account from today and 5 years ago, and if you could 10 years ago, there's not a single keyword that you can point to where the click-through rate has gone up. They have all gone down, every single one. You are not getting as many clicks per search as you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and that number is not going to turn around.
No, and first, let's say 6, 7 years ago, I thought, well, the complete pie is getting bigger, so it might not be a problem. But I think in the last few years, it is a problem, right? And I think a very big problem.
The global internet population has basically plateaued, right?
Yep.
And we're getting close to reaching maximum human population, and then it's expected that it'll start to decline. I think in about 15 years.
Yeah, at 10 or 11. Yeah, something like that. People. But what does this mean for the role of websites in general?
Oh, I still think websites are absolutely crucial. Absolutely crucial. I think they're as important, more important than they've ever been. But it's harder, it's more difficult to drive traffic directly to them versus indirectly. So the indirect path has become a very powerful lever for driving traffic, driving interest, getting people to your websites versus, getting those direct clicks. That's what the 0-click content conversation is all about. It's the indirect drivers of traffic to the website. Website's still crucial because it's the only place where you get to own and control the experience, get your brand message out, have the transactions and the actions that you want people to take front and center and present them the way you want to present them. And once someone has made it to your website, that's a good qualifier that they are interested in what you do. They want to learn about you. They are curious enough to care. They're likely to take action. And then your job is to make that website a place where it's easy to take the action you want them to take. It's easy to get them onto your email list. It's easy to get them to subscribe to you. It's easy to get them to buy your product or subscribe to your tool or use your free version or whatever you're trying to do.
Well, because when I think about when I first started doing SEO, most companies were just doing marketing in the do stage with their website, right? And then they moved up to think, to see, to more top of the funnel. Mm-hmm. And I think we are seeing the same thing right now, but then the other way around. Because people started doing content marketing in the C stage on their own website with their blog or the Whiteboard Friday. And in the think stage with inbound marketing, with search queries with a slight commercial intent to attract visitors, to download the white paper, to give them an email flow. And I think in the C and the think states, it's moving back to dark social, to social media, to all of these platforms. So should you even try, or should your website just be something you do in the do stage with your pricing and the demo and the contact form and the FAQs and maybe some case studies, and that's it?
I don't know. I don't think that's true for everyone. There might be a few people where that approach works fine, but I actually think that a website is a great place to host content. Content is still a great driver. So I would think about blogs, newsletters, webinars, white papers, research reports, short videos, right, that demo the product, a podcast. Like, these are all very valuable content networks and channels. The zero-click content thing is not about saying content marketing is dead and doesn't work and websites should just be advertisements for your product or calls to action for signups. I don't agree with that. I think that websites continue to benefit from content marketing. What I would argue is it's quite difficult to directly share your content on these platforms or in Google and expect the same kinds of results that you got 5 or 10 years ago. And so in addition to sharing things with a link and attempting to rank in Google, you should probably consider a zero-click content strategy in addition.
Yeah,
right?
maybe it's a bit more hybrid. So when I look at my own podcast, I still have the page on my website with the embedded video and the audio player. And for the first episodes, I also had the transcript. And people can still consume that, but they also can go to Spotify, to YouTube, or listen to the episode in 4 different snippets on LinkedIn and don't listen to the full episode.
Yep.
And
and that's a great way to go, right?
Yeah.
Because people who find those episodes on LinkedIn might still click over to you and follow you. They might, after seeing 5 or 6 clips, go, man, this is really good stuff. I need to follow Gerald on his website. Oh, you know what? I'm going to subscribe to that podcast. I'm going to start listening to full episodes. You're essentially dripping, right? It's like the email drip campaign. You're dripping the content to the person who might consume it and find it valuable until they decide, you know what, I'm signing up.
Indeed. And when you talk about KPIs and goals, what are the main goals or KPIs that zero-click content should have? What you should aim for?
Do you remember vanity metrics from the 2010s, right? People would rail against them and say like, oh, don't pay attention to views or impressions or minutes watched. Those are the metrics. Now those are our KPIs, right? And I think that's insanely frustrating for a bunch of people. The other one that you can do, and this goes to measurement over attribution. The other one you can do that I recommend is you can measure raw traffic to your site and branded search volume. So people are searching for, the inbound cast, or they're searching for Gerald Arcus, or they're searching for Rand Fishkin or Sparktoro. Well, that's a sign they learned about us somewhere. The zero-click content must have worked because people don't just search for you without learning about you first, right? Or hearing something about you. And therefore, channels like word of mouth and zero-click content and distribution through other people's sources of influence, those are powerful drivers to branded search and type-in traffic. So I would be looking at those two and say, gosh, our type-in and direct and branded search are up 15% month over month. Okay, this strategy is working. We don't know exactly which one's working. We don't know if it was this podcast or that one, but we know it's working.
And for some companies, that's hard because they also have ads on TV or radio, things like that. But I think that the reach and the engagement part and the social media part, I think that is pretty easy. And then, of course, you can also ask in a form, right? So when they become a customer, for example, with Sparktoro, how did they hear from Sparktoro? I'm not sure if you asked that, but...
Yeah, so I've seen some analysis of those forms, and the sad news is that they're generally very inaccurate. So, for example, when you ask people, actually, we don't ask, but people will email me and say, hey, Sparktoro, I heard about you from this influential person in marketing. And I go, I don't think that person's ever talked about us. And so, so then I check and they're like, oh, it must have been something else, but I thought I heard about you there.
I saw an example at
people's
Brighton.
memories are terrible.
Yeah, but I saw an example of this on Brighton SEO with Ahrefs, and they said that a lot of people, I think thousands of people, mentioned their YouTube channel as the primary source of how they hear from Ahrefs. And yeah, I think that's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things, it was really interesting at Moz. For years, people would say, oh, I watch Whiteboard Friday or whatever. And that was like a leading channel. And if you looked at the metrics, there's no way that was true, right? Whiteboard Friday, we hosted it on Wistia. We knew about every view that happened. Whiteboard Friday got 6% of the traffic, right? It was just, very, very tiny. But people had memory associations and they'd heard of it and the name was catchy. And so, anyway, all I'd say is just, if you think you're going to get attribution and measurement through asking people, how did you hear about us? You are not. It's not going to go well. It's not a terrible way to learn about potential sources. So for example, if somebody says, oh yeah, we heard about Sparktoro from the HubSpot blog. Oh, we've never been on the HubSpot blog, but that's a good sign that we probably should be. Right? Because they know about it. It's influential to them. They think they heard about us there. It probably makes good sense for us to try and get onto HubSpot's blog. So it's great for discovery, but it's terrible for actual attribution attempts.
Yeah. Other question. I saw something about the end of clickbait on the Sparktoro blog. And then I was thinking, I think this can mean the end of clickbait, but maybe there's a new problem coming. Engagement bait. So I think LinkedIn is looking more like Facebook every day. A lot of personal stories, sad stories, selfies, things to get attention. And to be honest, I hate that because sometimes I feel a bit forced to do the same if I want the best results, because it will get you engagement. And if you have engagement, you have reach.
Oh man, Gerald, I have terrible news for you. This is awful. I'm glad you're sitting down for this. Capitalism requires people to do things they don't want in order to make money.
Yep.
Right. And so, yes, I agree. There's lots of pressure to do things that you might not know. It's funny that you say this though, because I have heard the opposite from a lot of people, right? They're like, gosh, LinkedIn, it's so boring and businessy and just, inane and filled with posturing and this kind of stuff. Wouldn't it be great if it had more selfies and real stories and real people and, this kind of stuff. So, for every person like you, there's somebody else who loves that stuff. And for every person like them, there's one of you who hates it. So
I see a lot of these stories and then I think, is this real or is this just to get engagement, to get likes, and in most cases, I think it's the last. And I hate that because I don't want to be that person, but I also want to be successful on LinkedIn, of course.
Yep. I mean, I think that the Instagramification of LinkedIn is definitely coming if it's not already here. The one thing I would say, what I like and appreciate about LinkedIn is I think the realness of the identities and the connection to their professional environment and what they do and companies, all that kind of stuff. It biases folks to be, I think, a little more careful and considerate with the content that they post and what they reply. So, I occasionally will get a hateful comment on LinkedIn, but it's pretty rare. I would say on Twitter, every post, right? Every post is just, well, it wasn't for a while. Now it is again. But, Twitter was just, you look at your mentions, you're like, oh my God, these people are horrible. Why do they say these things? And does this help them in their careers somehow? And LinkedIn, at least people think about, does this help me in my career before they post something?
Yeah, that's good. So how has this changed your own approach for Sparktoro?
I mean, we've been going this way from the start, Charles. So this has been since we launched in 2020. Sparktoro has basically had this approach of we produce content on our website, but not very much. Usually a blog post or two every month, maybe three. We do, webinars. We have our Spark Together event that we just started doing this year, and we'll do again next year. But beyond that, not a ton of content on the website itself. We sort of, I would say 20% of our content production and marketing content production is for our website, and 80% is sort of for other platforms. So other people's podcasts and YouTube channels, we do a lot of those. Appearances on other people's webinars, speaking at other events, PR on other people's blogs or news sites, creation of resources for other people's audiences, newsletters. And
I
that
think
approach...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that approach has been very successful for us.
Yeah, and I think the way that you use your blog is also maybe a bit different than other companies. Not blog a lot, but what you have is, I think, pretty good. There are some articles that I have read multiple times that I send to colleagues, and I don't do that very often. But I think maybe that has also something to do with why you don't have a lot of SEO traffic, because if you want SEO traffic, you have to write different blogs. You have to write maybe more what is or how do I do this or 7 tips for this. And yeah, you create something that doesn't exist and then
Yeah, so my sense is if we wanted to do SEO well, like in order to have great search traffic, you need to rank for things that people search for. And Sparktoro is almost always sharing ideas, concepts, recommendations, strategies and tactics, product features, whatever, that no one is searching for yet, right? There's not a lot of people who are searching for, hey, tell me about this measurement versus attribution problem with dark social and zero-click content. Zero-click content has started to get a trickle of searches because people are starting to hear about it through podcasts like yours. But generally speaking, I mean, zero-click content was coined by Amanda. Like it's going to be, I had coined this phrase zero-click searches years ago when I did this research on, the percent of Google searches that end without a click. But we don't even rank for that, right? Google ranks like some coverage by, who knows, Search Engine Land or Barry Schwartz or something like that ahead of ours. I don't even think we might not even rank on page 1 for this phrase that we coined, right? And I don't care. Like it's not a big deal to me. It's not important. I don't really think about the driving traffic to Sparktoro with search is not my core goal, because I don't see people searching for anything directly that would lead them to needing our product. At Moz, different story. At Moz, people searched for SEO tools and SEO tactics and how do I, fix rel canonical and whatever. And Moz had a product that solved those problems. So it made sense to get people from search to our website into a free trial and onto the paid service.
But if you
With Sparktoro, it's the other way around.
If you had started Moz today, would you still have that approach? Because there are 500 other websites who are talking about what a canonical tag is.
Yeah, I don't think I would start Moz today, right? Because that field is so flooded with competition. I mean, there's got to be 20 SEO tools that are very good, doing, more than $5 million a year in revenue, incredibly crowded space. And I think standing out in that field is really, really difficult. Maybe you could find like one little angle, around an SEO product or something that would work. But as an entrepreneur, like what I really like looking for is places that give me a competitive advantage. And I think one of the things that is a competitive advantage for us is being the first in a new weird space.
Yeah, I understand that. And what do you think about the branding part of featured snippets? So back to the SEO part of. So a lot of SEO consultants are talking about that part, and I think a lot of them are afraid for their jobs. So they also mention the branding effect. But to be honest, if I have a branding goal, SEO with featured snippets is not one of the things that is on top of my list. So maybe there is some benefit, but it's not the reason why you do SEO, right?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty darn small.
Yeah.
I think the problem with relying on a featured snippet or a Google ranking to deliver brand recognition and familiarity and trust is that it takes a long time and a lot of impressions through a channel like that versus a much shorter time and a much smaller number of impressions through other channels, right? So if you can, if you compare, hey, we could rank for this featured snippet, 1,000 people a month search for it. They're all going to see our featured snippet. Very few are going to click because they get the answer right there. I would guess that, that the value of that is much lower than 10 people who read an email newsletter getting that newsletter and seeing that you sponsored it.
Yeah, and even when you compare it to other zero-click content. So, for example, if I see a post from you on LinkedIn, I'm pretty sure that I remember the next day that it was you who sent that message. With SEO,
especially video, right? Short video clips, incredibly brandable, right? I think we're wired to remember human faces and to build associations around, a person and an idea and a company or a brand versus, I think Google has trained us over the years to sort of ignore the brand, pay attention to the content, the answer. That's not entirely true. Like there's exceptions to that. I think there are some people who, when they browse Google, they're more thoughtful about, hey, is this source trustworthy? Can I trust them? And that's actually, I think, really challenging for people who get featured snippets but don't have a brand people know. Because if you're not already a brand that those searchers know, like, and trust, they're going to have a hard time winning that snippet, clicking through, maintaining that snippet for a long time. A brand that people trust is probably going to come in and take it from you eventually.
Yeah, and I think it won't contribute to a lot of business KPIs. So I think that is the hard part.
I agree.
When you look at this trend for the next 5 years, what do you expect? So a lot of marketing tactics or things you can do are already changing. So SEO, social media marketing, content marketing, lead generation, inbound marketing, all of these things have changed already by this. I think.
Yeah, email marketing might be the one that kind of hasn't.
Yeah.
Right? Like email marketing has stayed remarkably consistent compared to the rest of the channels. Email marketing has been very consistent for a lot of years, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but the problem I think with email marketing is that it's easier to get more subscribers when people are on your website. So getting new subscribers is the hard part.
I mean, zero-click content is great for subscribers, though, right? All the Substack folks on Twitter and LinkedIn, like that zero-click content strategy works really well for them because they'll take pieces of their newsletter and share it. They'll use those. Whatever, a snippet of the content, or they'll talk about an idea and then they'll put it in the newsletter. So I think it can work pretty well as an advertising or marketing tactic to get people to your newsletter.
Yeah. So is when you look at B2B marketing, is demand generation the big solution for this problem? Or I think you already talked with Chris Walker in another podcast. I haven't heard it yet, but.
So let's see. I would say that no two companies are the same, right? And you should not, if you hear this podcast and you think to yourself, okay, I should change my strategy to do exactly what Rand and Sparktoro do. Probably not, right? I don't think that's the right move. I think what's the right move is to intelligently consider your options and make the best decision for you based on the input. So are people searching for the product or service? Are there lots of keywords that if someone searched for that and they clicked on your link at the top, they would be likely to buy your product? And you can test this with PPC, right? So search advertising is a great way to test that. If that's true, then SEO is probably a good channel for you, and you should try to create content and try and get it ranked and try and distribute it. And you should probably use zero-click content as a way to distribute that content and distribute your brand. If very few people are searching for what you have to offer, then you might want to lean into a more zero-click centric strategy where zero-click content is like a ton of what you do. If you hate social media marketing and you are not a good social media marketer, then you should probably ignore most of these channels entirely and focus instead on, maybe sales and lead gen and networking. And maybe you're great at conferences and events, and you should focus on, your speaking career and those kinds of things to generate leads. If none of those work for you, maybe you'd be a great podcaster or a YouTube host, and YouTube is something that you can really focus on, and you can sort of do YouTube SEO, and your YouTube audience is the one that you grow, and you use zero-click content to take snippets of your videos and share them on other channels. But I'm just saying, none of these is the right one for everyone.
No, and it's not black and white. So
yeah,
it's not that it has changed everything. It's a big trend. But a lot of the old tactics can still work, right?
Old tactics can still work. They can often work even better when combined with new tactics. A lot of times things don't fade away, right? It's not that, everybody today likes to say, oh, Facebook is so dead. Man, Facebook is, if you go compare today's Facebook, the amount of engagement that stuff gets on Facebook today to 2012 when Facebook was like the hottest thing on the block, there's more today, right? On an absolute basis, there's more. It's just that it's not hot because it's not new and it's not growing as fast.
Yeah. So, and maybe you have the engagement, but I think reach, that is a big problem.
Yeah. And competitiveness, right? Competitiveness is a huge issue. So way more competitive to try and stand out in the crowded field of Facebook today than in 2008 or 2012.
Yeah. Do you have one big last takeaway before we end this podcast?
Oh, yeah.
For B2B companies who are learning about this trend.
My gosh. So I would certainly recommend, if you aren't already, you should follow Amanda Natividad, because Amanda, who coined this phrase, uses zero-click content better than anyone else I've seen. She does it very consistently. If you want to see examples of how she does that with blog posts, how she does it across different networks, Twitter and LinkedIn and Mastodon and Facebook and Instagram. If you want to see how she's building up her own newsletter in addition to Sparktoro's newsletter, it's just really impressive. So that would be one of my tips. I would also say you should keep an eye out for other people in your sector who are doing zero-click content. Look at your Twitter feed, look at your LinkedIn feed, pay attention to Reddit, pay attention to YouTube, see how other people are growing their channels without requiring a link.
Yep. Great. Thanks a lot, Rand. And have
a
nice rest of the day.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Inbound Forecast. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or in your favorite podcast app.